Hi, welcome to Dr. Mark's Music Notes. I'm Dr. Mark Runkles, and today we're going to conclude this series on the Metronome March practice technique. Last week, we found a hard passage of music and broke it down into smaller, more manageable chunks and pieces. This week, I'll explain how to increase the metronome incrementally and put the pieces and chunks back together. For an overview of the Metronome March, see the video called The Metronome March, Mastering Difficult Passages in 6 Steps. I'll put the link in this video's description so you can find it if you haven't already seen it. Start with the metronome set for 60 beats per minute with the 16th note subdivision on. Play measure 219 through the C on beat 1 of measure 220 perfectly at least 3 times in a row. Move the metronome up to 63 beats per minute and repeat measure 219 perfectly at least 3 times in a row. Move the metronome up to 65 beats per minute and repeat measure 219 perfectly at least 3 times in a row. Move the metronome up to 68 beats per minute and repeat measure 219 perfectly at least 3 times in a row. Move the metronome up to 70 beats per minute and repeat measure 219 perfectly at least 3 times in a row. Next, we'll move the metronome back to 60 beats per minute and work on measure 220. Play it at least 3 times in a row perfectly. Incrementally increase the metronome to 70 beats per minute like we did with piece 1. On metronome markings ending in 0 or 5, we'll add a 4th repeat and start in measure 219 to practice linking the 2 pieces together. This slide shows pieces 1 and 2 from the first chunk, and this slide shows pieces 3 and 4 from the first chunk. We have 2 options moving forward from here. Option 1 is to stick with this first pair. Return to piece 1 at 70 beats per minute and incrementally increase the tempo on the first 2 pieces as previously outlined until the target tempo is reached. Then proceed to work on the second pair, pieces 3 and 4, in the same manner, beginning at 60 beats per minute until the target tempo is reached. Our second option is to jump to measures 221 and 222 beginning at 60 beats per minute and work them up to 70 beats per minute. The only difference is that we'll add a 5th repeat when we get measure 222 up to both 65 and 70 beats per minute to play from measure 219 through beat 1 of measure 223. After playing all 4 measures of this chunk at 70 beats per minute, play measure 219 once at 70 beats per minute before moving the metronome up to 73 beats per minute. Proceed in the same manner as above until you reach 80 beats per minute for both pairs, then 90 beats per minute, then 100, then 110, and finally our target tempo of 120 beats per minute. As a reminder, the performance tempo does not have to be reached in one practice session. The next step will be to work on the second chunk. The slide tells you to work on chunk 2 just like you worked on chunk 1. However, you'll have noticed it's almost exactly the same except for the articulation and a couple notes at the end of measure 226. Because these 2 chunks are so similar, we can work on them at the same time. Instead of playing measure 219 perfectly 3 times in a row, only play it twice. Switch to measure 223 and play it twice in a row perfectly before increasing the tempo. Learn the 3rd and 4th chunks in the same manner as these first 2. They aren't similar, so you won't be able to learn them concurrently like you can with the first 2. Now that we can play each chunk of this difficult passage at the performance tempo, we have to put them together. Sometimes they go together easily and sometimes they don't. We'll start back at half tempo, which is 60 beats per minute. And we'll increase the tempo by 10 beats per minute after playing 2 chunks perfectly 3 times in a row together at each tempo. Start by combining chunks 1 and 2. Then combine chunks 2 and 3, and then combine chunks 3 and 4. Now that the links between each pair of chunks are solid, we can put together all 4 of them. At this point, you likely won't need to start at half tempo. Instead, start at 2/3 or 3/4 tempo, which would be either 80 or 90 beats per minute for this example. Start with chunk 4 and play it once. Add chunk 3 and play them once. Add chunk 2 and play them once. Add chunk 1 and play the entire passage once. Increase the tempo by 10 beats per minute and start with chunk 4 again. Once the entire passage is put together, increase the metronome by another 10 beats per minute. Proceed in this manner until the target tempo for the entire passage has been reached. Congratulations! You have learned a difficult section. Now apply the Metronome March technique to learning a difficult passage in your own repertoire. Learning music in this way is extremely tedious and not very exciting. The only way to execute difficult passages under the pressure of a performance is to repeat them a lot. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions, and click the subscribe button for notifications about more information on practice techniques and other musical topics. Thanks for watching. Play on.